Can you see yourself in this?
Hi, everyone. We're just getting started. This is the first time that we're doing a hybrid and in-person meeting. So we're going to try to look at the camera and look at the people who are in the room. But we're very glad that everyone is here. Chuck, do you want to?
Sure. First and foremost, I want to welcome you to Thrive 9th Ward. It is great to have you in this facility. And it's so great to have you here. For those of you who are not here that are joining us by Zoom, thank you so much for joining us for this very important conversation that we're going to have with the city. My name is Chuck Morse. I'm the Executive Director for Thrive New Orleans. We are, again, in the process, in the nonprofit world, and we're training small businesses around green infrastructure. So many of the green infrastructure experts that are out there in the marketplace right now have come from Thrive New Orleans. Many of them are here. We're so glad that you're here. We're very proud of the work that you're doing. We have already had 7 cohorts come through our program, and those cohort graduates are doing an exceptional job. Not only are we in the small business realm as it relates to green infrastructure and stormwater management from a business perspective, we're also involved in workforce development around green infrastructure and stormwater management. We are proud that we are the city's national disaster resilience operator, which means that we are tasked with training over 150 individuals in green infrastructure for the workforce space. So, and again, for small businesses, it's extremely important that they have a workforce, and for a workforce, it's extremely important that small businesses to link to for jobs. So this is a very important conversation that we're going to have today, and I'm so happy and so glad that the city saw fit to have this conversation, and that we will be able to inform you about all those opportunities that are about to happen as relates to what I call the future economy of our city and the lifeline of our city that's going to make our city resilient and sustainable. So thank you so much for participating today. And on behalf of Thrive New Orleans and all of our partners, thank you so much for tuning in or being here and actually here present. I'd like to introduce you to one of my partners now, our partners, Andrea Chen, who is the Executive Director of Propeller. We have a solid relationship where we work together to make sure that the businesses that are going through the pipeline have all the opportunities and expertise needed to be successful in this space. So without further ado, Andrea.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Chen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Propeller. We're a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to support and grow entrepreneurs to tackle social and environmental disparities. So one of our key focus areas is green infrastructure. So we run at this point 5 or 6 water accelerators, and you may have heard about the Water Challenge, where we have water companies pitch their ideas. And so we're here to support you all. This meeting today is very important to us because we know that there are a lot of green infrastructure opportunities coming up that have already happened or are coming up with the city of New Orleans, and we're really excited that we have all of, you can't see them if you're online, but we have all these folks from the city of New Orleans here to really break down all the many projects that are coming up, and so you know exactly when opportunities will be coming up and how you can bid for them. And so maybe I'll just wrap up by saying, in terms of programming, so Thrive and Propeller have a very close partnership, and so if you're an emerging business or a business that is interested in getting into the green infrastructure space, please do reach out to Propeller and Thrive. Thrive has a program called the Green Academy to train you in green infrastructure, the technical pieces, and then Green Academy participants also participate in the Propeller Water Accelerator and the Water Challenge that's going to be coming up in June, and the Water Accelerator is coming up this August. So if there's anything that you need as you're thinking about preparing your submissions to these opportunities and bidding for opportunities, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and we can provide you resources. We'll also be sending up a follow-up after this meeting if you sign up either online and we have your information or in person. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mary Kincaid, who's the program manager, the City of New Orleans, and we'll also send out this slide deck so you can see the programmatic work that Thrive and Propeller do. Okay. All right. Mary?
you so much, Andrea. Thank you all for being here today. So part of what we wanted to talk about is why do we do these types of projects? You know, why not just have as big of a pump or as big of a pipe as possible? And it has to do with climate change and being prepared for that. You know, it's not possible to pump your way or pipe your way out of these problems. So how do we change this? That has to do with what we call living with water. And our projects that we're going to talk about today are part of that. So types of green infrastructure, if you're here today, you probably heard this term before, but if you haven't, you know, so some of the types of green infrastructure that we have around the city is detention in our north stormwater lots. You'll also see some of these planters and disconnected downspouts in the central business district area. You might also see some green walls in that part of town. If you go to Joe Bartholomew Park, you'll see this large bioswale that was recently put in as part of the Contilly project. If you'd like to have a delicious breakfast at Ruby's Slipper in Mid-City, you'll see this permeable parking lot. Also, they have bioswales as well. Something that we don't yet have quite as much as I would like to have, but that I hope that we'll see more of, is a cool roof or a green roof. These are some of the things that we already have around town and that we're going to be building more of. Now, how do we get to that? You know, so what are the types of constructions, the types of construction that lead to that project? So we have permeable concrete. There can also be permeable asphalt, or there can also be retained aggregate like True Grit. There's modular underground storage. We can see what goes into that. And then there's also the other typical types of, you know, construction that we think about where it just comes to excavation, grading, placing embankment, you know, being able to compact things in place, laying out geotextiles correctly, and, you know, installing them, connecting them correctly. So those are skills that we're looking for on these projects as well. To get into what is it that we're doing and where, I'm going to cover our hazard mitigation projects first. There's a large project that we're going to do that is called Broadmoor because it benefits the Broadmoor neighborhood, but it's also known as Drainage Pump Station 1. So you can see here we have a large project area. If you notice on the screen, you know, we talked a little bit about the stormwater parks. We have several stormwater parks, stormwater lots. We're also doing some green intersections that involve permeable paving and pavers. There are pipe upgrades for those of y'all that work in traditional gray infrastructure and are interested in that type of work and have the ability to place drainage. And then we are doing some complete streets, so doing some bioswales, putting in some striping. So quite a lot of traditional types of infrastructure associated with this work. The way that these are going to work, you can see that the intersection upgrades are going to include pervious gutters, rain gardens, pervious crosswalks. Some of those are with pavers, some of those are with pervious concrete. This whole project is going to store 12.9 million gallons of water. And you'll notice here that I haven't given you like an exact bid date, right? Because there's some things that are kind of up in the air, but we're waiting on our final environmental approval from FEMA. But if you go to NOLA.gov/resilience, that'll take you to a drop-down menu on the left that'll give you either our hazard mitigation or our disaster resilience projects. And you can always track that from that site, or we're going to also give you emails later in this presentation, and you can contact us at any time for a status on that. But this is one to watch. It is $45 million, but it's not going to come out as one $45 million bid. Notice that we talked about phase 1 and phase 2. This is part of what the city is doing. It's called debundling, where we're trying to take a larger project and break it into several different construction projects so that we can get closer to people's bonding capacity. The State Park project is one that's currently still in design at 90% complete. We're actually going to have a public meeting on that on the 90% design on December 9th. So again, if you go to NOLA.gov/resilience, you'll find the information for that, and you can sign up to attend that public meeting if you have a really in-depth look at this project. But basically, we're taking existing lagoons in City Park, we're connecting them to drainage coming from Lake Vista, and we're enlarging those lagoons. So if you work in excavation, embankment, placing geotextiles, shoreline stabilization, these are things that should be interesting to you. And we expect to advertise that for construction early next year. We'll look at how that works so you can see that we're going to be using the existing lagoons and infrastructure of City Park. Oak Park is one that you may already have noticed was put out for bid, and that's gonna be put out for bid again by DPW. They're looking at how they're going to achieve that underground storage, and it'll be put out again, we think, in January of 2022. So if you had to look at that the first time, or if it got by you the first time, just make a note of that. This is taking 4 lots that were owned by Nora, putting them together and doing underground storage, similar to what was done on Easton Park. So this will be underground storage, and then it'll be made to look exactly like it had before, so that we're not taking that parcel out of future use by the community. The St. Rock project is also going to be coming out early next year. This is one with some road work, some permeable pavers, some bioswale. So those of you that work in roadway construction, this could be something maybe on your radar, and those of you that are interested in bioswales and green infrastructure can be on your list as well. Now I'm going to move into talking about our National Disaster Resilience projects. I wanted to make this distinction because these projects that are funded by HUD will also have Section 3 requirements. Michelle's going to come up a little bit later and talk about Section 3 requirements and how to either participate in that opportunity or how to make sure that you're compliant with that. So these HUD projects, you can see they're kind of clustered in Gentilly and how they all relate to each other. Little update on this program. We did get an extension on the grant to August of 2023. Now, in addition to the national declared disaster of COVID, we had 3 others, right? So we had the cyber attack, we had Zeta, and we had Ida. So we do have a 1-year extension because of COVID, but that's certainly not the only thing that we've experienced here locally. We do look to have a lot of construction starting in 2022, and we've managed to debundle $77 million of that. And I'll show you, you'll see as we talk of projects, like breaking them down into 2 phases or 3 phases even, so that we can get that to something that works for people locally. Blue and green corridors, you'll see, is broken down into 3 phases. We anticipate that we'll be advertising some of these for bids starting in May of next year. This is one where we're going into the neutral ground of Elysian Fields. We're going to be creating circulating bodies of water, blue corridors. And then on our St. Rock and other streets that intersect with Elysian Fields, we're going to be doing stormwater storage. Those will be our green corridors. Now, 90% design is complete for phase 1. We still have 90% design coming up on phases 2 and 3. So for those of y'all that are interested in providing feedback, or if you know someone who lives in the area and wants to provide feedback, we are still going to be having public comment on the 90% design for phases 2 and 3. St. Bernard campus. This, some of y'all may know, is the Willie Hall Playground. So we're really excited to bring this back as the Willie Hall Playground, but we're going to be doing stormwater storage under the football field. We're going to have a softball field with stormwater storage. We're going to have a covered basketball court. We're going to have a concession stand. We are currently working with the State Planning Commission so that we can have a pier on Bayou St. John, because if we're living with water, you know, if you're living with someone, you interact with them, right? You see them in the hallway and you go, hey, can I get right there? I need to put something away. Or can I get, you know, we all just went through this with Thanksgiving and having too many people in our houses, right? So if you're living with water, you're going to be able to interact with it. Well, you can fish on Bayou St. John if you can walk on unstable ground, you know, and you're not in a wheelchair. But if you're not able to walk on unstable ground, you're not able to walk on soft ground, then you really can. So by adding this pier here at Willie Hall, we want to really expand access and expand the experience of living with water for people who have disabilities or people that are elderly. We want to bring that access right there in the neighborhood, there at the end of Milton Street. So in addition to the football field, you see that we're adding a running track. There'll be lighting, there'll be fencing, so a lot of different things involved in this. If you're interested in this project, which is going to be advertised in early next year, again, you can actually go through our past presentations that go into details of the scopes in there. If you go to NOLA.gov/resilience and go to St. Bernard. So if these are some of your skill sets, you know, please do take a look at all the things that we're going to be constructing from lighting and fencing. St. Anthony Green Streets is what we think of as a neighborhood scale project. We're connecting 3 existing parks in a meaningful way by adding these amenities to the streets in between those parks, and really kind of making more of a neighborhood loop. Now, what is that going to look like? And what does it mean when we say debunkling? So I left this in because I wanted to show y'all kind of what we're doing. So on some of these, we're debunkling by skill. So if we're building, say the concession building, then we're going to have that and advertise that separately from all of the excavation that's needed for the football field. But in some of them where there's not really like a big differentiation skill set, we're just breaking this down geographically. So this will be advertised in 3 different construction packages: the north, the south, and the middle section. So you can see that we have park work. We're going to be adding bus swales and streets, and then similar to the work that you've seen in the JRR program, there's also roadway work. The Mildenberg project, we have a lot of things that are coming out, but we also have some things that are starting design, that there will be opportunities for people that are interested in following along the design process, or people that are not really quite ready to bid on things in the next quarter or the next 2 quarters. We have things that are a little further out that I wanted to share with you, that this is one that we had to re-advertise and begin design. So we're going to start community engagement on that on January 22nd. I know you can't see if you join us via Zoom, but we do have our community engagement liaison, Elizabeth Pedroso, here with us today. So if you have an opportunity, please say hello. If not, again, NOLA.gov/resilience will give you all the contact information. Thank you, Elizabeth. Miracle Water Garden, this is one that was the first phase was advertised today. And we do anticipate having our pre-bid meeting on December 16th. So you should be registered in our GRAS system to make sure that you're receiving these notifications and that you can participate in that process. If not, go to NOLA.gov and go to our procurement department, and there are steps on how to register in the GRAS system. Now, we do have a second phase of this that involves educational buildings, and we anticipate to go into construction on that in January of 2023. Now, Pontilli is another one like Miraboo that has 2 phases. So there was a large project called Pontilli that just finished construction, and that includes the big bioswale that I was talking about in Joe Bartholomew Park. But we have a smaller project that involves the canal between the Pontchartrain Park and Gentilly neighborhoods, and turning that canal into a linear park and adding some pedestrian bridges. That's another one that we're starting now, and community engagement will start now. So if there's one that you want to follow along for design or participate in our design process, that's certainly one that is a little bit further out. Dillard Wetlands is something that I suspect a lot of people didn't even know was there. So on the other side of London Canal from Dillard University, there's this 26-acre parcel of land that through accidents of planning and usage had never really been developed. And it had been cut once for timber in the 40s, but there's some large 100-year-old trees in there. So turning this into something that people can access a forest in the middle of the city and get the many benefits that the Japanese people have discovered from forest therapy and forest meditation, something that's in your backyard. So this is a 90% design. We anticipate it'll go into advertisement in July of next year. But as 90% design, this is something that you can still track and get details on the project site. And I've got here our project location, and you can also see the different types of trees that are out there. Now for debundling, one of the ones that we're looking at is we're looking at putting that invasive tree removal ahead of construction as a separate service. So even though this is a smaller project, we're still looking for opportunities to debundle and bring opportunities to you directly as much as possible. Microgrids is something that I think it's so much easier for people to talk about than it was prior to IDA. Knowing what islanded capacity and being able to do a black start, we're so much more aware of what these terms mean and what they mean for us now. But basically, a microgrid is a grid that is standing alone, separate from the main grid. And when the main grid goes down, your microgrid continues to power things locally. But obviously, with the term being micro, it's powering things on a neighborhood level. A we do have an existing microgrid in New Orleans, that's the St. Peter apartment building. So that's a microgrid that's basically keeping that building going. This is something that's going to be a community microgrid in the Gentilly area. Those are the projects that I have. We're going to hold questions to the end, but I'm happy to talk with anyone about what the scopes are and what we're looking at there. So we're going to switch now to Kai from our procurement office.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about our procurement process. Next slide. So the City of New Orleans utilizes the BRASS supplier portal to release all of our informal and formal solicitations. To access the BRASS supplier portal, simply visit our website at nola.gov/purchasing, and you will access BRASS itself by clicking the Visit the Supplier Portal button, which is depicted on the screen. Here you'll be able to register as a supplier, select all of the commodity codes that relate to the goods and services your business can provide, as well as find solicitations and opportunities. If you are not already, we do recommend you register as a supplier, and we strongly recommend that you select every possible commodity code that you see that is related to the type of business you perform or the types of goods that your company can provide. Registering is also beneficial as you will be able to receive automatic notifications and updates related to opportunities and solicitations released by the city, and you will also have the opportunity to respond to those solicitations. Next slide. So to procure these services for the green infrastructure projects, the city will be utilizing two procurement methods: the invitation to bid process, also known as the ITB process, and the request for proposals process, which is also known as the RFP process. So let's take a moment to define each of these procurement methods. Next slide. So the invitation to bid, or ITB, is the standard procurement method utilized when public competition is sought for purchases of goods or non-professional services valued at more than $20,000 or public works valued at more than $150,000. Next slide. So just to walk through the invitation to bid process, we first begin with the pre-solicitation or planning portion. During the pre-solicitation and planning phase, the city will work to establish the funding/project budget, the timeline, as well as develop the specifications. During the solicitation process or the solicitation phase, the city will release or advertise the solicitation for 21 to 30 days on the city's BRASS supplier portal, as well as in the Advocate, which is the city's official journal. During this time, the city will also host pre-bid conferences and respond to all vendor questions. Those pre-bid conferences are an opportunity for you all to gather more information as well as ask questions, but you will also have an opportunity to email your questions into the designated purchasing official and have them responded to via addendum. The next phase will be the bid opening. On the submission deadline, all of the bids received in a timely manner will be opened and announced in a public forum. The next phase will be the responsive and responsibility check. Following the bid opening, the city will conduct a responsive and responsibility check by which it will assess the responses to ensure compliance with all of the bid requirements. The next phase will be award and contract routing. Following the assessment phase, the city will then proceed with issuing an intent to award letter and begin the process of routing a contract between the city and the lowest responsible bidder. The next phase will be notice to proceed and services rendered. Once the contract has been fully executed, the vendor will be given the green light to proceed with performing the services. And then the last phase will be invoice submission and payment. After the services have been rendered, the vendor will submit their invoice via the BRASS supplier portal, And once approved, payment will be issued net 30 of the date posted on the invoice. Next slide. So let's briefly define a request for proposal, or RFP. A RFP is the standard procurement method used for competitive purchases for professional services costing more than $15,000, and an award is based on best value rather than the lowest price. Next slide. So let's walk through the request for proposal process. It is similar, but it also has some major differences from the invitation to bid process. So the first phase, similar to the invitation to bids, will be the pre-solicitation or planning. And during this time, during that pre-solicitation and planning phase, the city will work to establish the funding project budget and timeline, as well as develop the scope of services. Then we'll have the solicitation phase, during which the city will release and advertise the solicitation for 14 to 30 days on the city's Brass Supplier Portal, as well as in the Advocate, which is the city's official journal. During this time, the city will host a pre-submission conference, as well as respond to any vendor questions. Similar to the invitation to bid, the pre-submission conferences are an opportunity for you all to gather additional information and to ask questions. So we do strongly urge that folks attend, if possible, all pre-submission and pre-bid conferences that you see posted or associated with the green infrastructure projects. The next phase will be the proposal deadline and responsive check. During the following the submission deadline, all the proposals received by the deadline will be open. The city will then complete the responsive check, by which it will assess the responses to ensure that their compliance with all the requirements. Following the proposal deadline and responsive check, we will have the selection committee. So following the receipt and assessment of the responses, the selection committee will gather to discuss and evaluate or score the responsive proposals, which will culminate in the selection of the proposal offering the best value to the city. The next phase will be the award and contract routing. So following the selection by the selection committee, the city proceeds with issuing an intent to award letter to the selected vendor. The city and the selected vendor will then engage in contract negotiations, which will culminate in the city beginning the process of routing a contract between the city and the selected respondent. The next phase will be services rendered. Once the contract has been fully executed, the vendor will be given the green light to proceed with performing the services. And then the final phase will be invoice and payment. After the services have been rendered, the vendor will submit their invoices via the Brass Supplier Portal. And once approved, payment will be issued net 30 of the date on the invoice. So now that we've gone through the invitation to bid and the request for proposals project, just want to highlight one additional thing. Next slide. So as these projects will be funded using FEMA and HUD funds, projects that are funded utilizing federal funds, such as FEMA or HUD/NDR funds, will have additional provisions and compliance requirements. And these additional provisions and compliance requirements will be, the respondents will need to adhere to them. And one of those additional compliance measures will be Section 3, which Michelle Riddler will discuss with you all later. And so I'm going to turn it over now to the equitable business opportunities.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining on Zoom. My name is Matthew Cullinan, Compliance Officer with the Office of Supplier Diversity, here to talk about the Equitable Business Opportunities Program. So what is the EBO program? It is administered through our office, the Office of Supplier Diversity, and it was established to assist underserved, underutilized, and disadvantaged businesses with gaining greater access to procurement opportunities, resources to build competitively viable and sustaining businesses in and for the city of New Orleans. Now, EBOs, by definition, for our purposes, are also known as DBEs, disadvantaged business enterprise, which is defined in the program for our program purposes as an entity or individual certified as a socially and economically disadvantaged business through the state and local disadvantaged business enterprise program, or the LAUCP, the Louisiana Unified Certification Program. Currently, those are the two certifications that we have designated as counting towards our DBE participation goals. Now, if you aren't certified, we encourage you to apply for certification. Eligibility for certification is you must be a for-profit small business. The ownership must be at least 51% owned by socially and economically disadvantaged persons. And those persons must also control management and operations of that company. That business must be independent, that they are not tied to another business or entity in a way to compromise its independence and control. The SLDBE program is a race and gender neutral program that does not presume social and economic disadvantage, and it is upon the applicants to provide the burden of proof of their eligibility. So again, for DBE certification, must be certified with either the SLDBE program or the LAUCP. LAUCP is managed by the Louisiana Department of Transportation. And you can go to laucp.org for their information on their certification. And you must be certified in your respective scope of work that you intend to do business, so that we know that we can count towards that scope of work and that you indeed perform that work. For our application, the SLDBE program, you can go to this link here, neworleans.dbesystem.com. You can also access that through our department webpage on NOLA.gov. So what does that mean? When you become certified, well, we apply our goals, but we want to make sure you know of opportunities. So as Kai had stated, make sure you're registered in BRAS and select your appropriate commodity codes. We can't stress that enough. Make sure that your commodity codes are selected so you know procurement opportunities that are related to what you do. And so that way you can get information on that through the BRAS system. Also, many of our solicitations, especially our larger solicitations, will have a DBE interest form within the solicitation, within the invitation to bid, or within the request for proposals. And that's on BRAS. And you want to make sure that you're filling that out prior to the pre-bid or the pre-proposal meeting, as we then announce to the potential bidders and respondents of who is actually interested. Now, that's not an exhaustive list. We still remind folks they need to check the directory, but obviously it's better to be proactive and better to take that opportunity to network your business and say who you are and say that you're interested. We also encourage you to attend pre-bids. I know a lot of them right now are all on WebEx, done virtually. But we still encourage you to attend those, and then also make sure you're checking BRAS for addendums to see who actually attended those pre-bids, so that way you can maybe reach out to potential primes or other vendors that you can network with to partner on these projects. And again, we want to ensure that your certification record reflects all scopes of work that your firm has the capacity to perform. So that way, when folks are searching the directory, they can find the commodity codes or find your business description based on what you do, and that's related to the projects. And so we establish an equity goal, also known as the DBE goal, to all our contracts over $15,000 with the City of New Orleans. And since these projects are being procured through the City of New Orleans, per the city ordinance, the DBE equity goal is required for all public spending or private projects that utilize public funding or incentives. Now, the default equity goal for contracts is 35%, but a narrowly tailored goal may be established for that individual contract. So it's important to read what that is within the invitation to bid or the RFP. And it is upon the vendor, the prime contractor's responsibility to meet the equity goal with subcontractors certified as DBEs, again with either the SL DBE or the LAUCP directories. A DBE may satisfy the goal themselves if they are self-performing as a prime, provided they self-perform a minimum of 30% of the contract and meet the established equity goal. So there will be forms that are required when submitting a bid or submitting an RFP. And I want to go over these since it is very important, because if you don't have these, then your bid may be thrown out. And so the DBE Compliance Form 3 or the DBE Participation Plan is required to be submitted for all RFPs and RFQs. And that's always either listed on brass or located within the RFP. Those forms are also found on Supplier Diversity's webpage. And the DBE Compliance Form 1 or the DBE Responsiveness Form lists who you will be utilizing on that project is required to be submitted post-selection for all solicitations. So this is a post-bid document for invitations to bid, and if you are the selected respondent for RFPs, then it is required when you are told that you're the selected respondent. Now, if you're unable to meet the equity goal, then the DBE Compliance Form 2 must be submitted. That's your good faith efforts form, documenting how you reached out, who you reached out to, how you attempted to meet the goal, and any explanation as to why the goal wasn't met. And so this is just a grab of our webpage. I certainly encourage you to visit it. We want to make sure you have all the resources necessary. So make sure, if you haven't already, that you apply for DBE certification. And that is done through our website. And also on that website, you can see our DBE directory link. That's where you will find the link to both the SL DBE directory and the LAUCP directory. And again, make sure you're registered as a vendor in brass. Gonna hammer that one home. So that way you know about upcoming opportunities. And then we want to make sure that we give prime contractors a chance to reach out to DBEs and advertise for a variety of reasons. And so we have our DBE opportunities page that can be utilized for more than just city projects. And so it's good to click that link. That's the one, number 3 up there. That is where primes can advertise when they're searching for firms and subcontractors for specific scope of work on projects. And then we want to make sure that you have answers to any frequently asked questions. That's on there as well. So I will now turn it over to Michelle Redler to go over the Section 3 requirements.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Redler. My title is the Labor Compliance Manager for the City of New Orleans in the Office of Community Development. So I serve as the Section 3 coordinator for the city, and also I oversee Davis-Bacon compliance monitoring on our HUD-funded projects. And just as an aside, all of those Gentilly Resilience District projects that are funded by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, one of those extra requirements for those projects will be Davis-Bacon prevailing wage rates. And the other, of course, is Section 3. So Section 3 is a provision of the Housing and Urban Development Act 1968. In general, the purpose of it is to give economic opportunities to low and very low income persons, particularly those in the area, in the project area. So there are some goals, some requirements on projects that go along with this to promote those economic opportunities. So in general, contractors on these projects should aim to hire low-income individuals for hiring opportunities in these projects, provide training wherever that's possible, and also make efforts to reach out to certified Section 3 businesses for contracting opportunities. So I like to point out that Section 3 it's geographic and income based. So low income, according to HUD, would mean a person makes 80% or less of the area median income for the Greater New Orleans metropolitan area. And so you can see here, these are the HUD income limits for 2021. They change every year. So the other aspect of being a Section 3 resident or a Section 3 worker in New Orleans is living, of course, in New Orleans. And there are provisions to provide particular priority for those who live in the actual neighborhood or service area of the project. So that's something that we try to promote, that people in the community where the work is happening are afforded those employment opportunities. So a Section 3 business would be one which is at least 51% owned by low-income residents of New Orleans. Or if 30% of your staff are low-income residents of New Orleans, and can also qualify you for eligibility as a Section 3 business. And I'd like to add that HUD has changed some of the regulations regarding Section 3 recently. So some of the tracking requirements for Section 3 might be a little different on some of these projects. That'll be specified up front whenever the projects are actually going to bid. But the other qualification for becoming a Section 3 resident is if 75% of the labor hours of your business are worked by low-income individuals, then that qualifies your business as a Section 3 business. So that means that by becoming certified, you would have that more of an edge to receive priority in contracting opportunities. So as far as project requirements, 30% of new hires must be Section 3 residents. 10% of construction subcontracts should be awarded to Section 3 business concerns. 3% of non-construction subcontracts should be awarded Section 3 business concerns. And you must demonstrate that you've made good faith efforts to comply with the provisions of Section 3. So in order to become certified as Section 3 business, the first step is that I'd like you to email me. So my contact information is here. My email address is meredler@nola.gov, or you can email laborcompliance@nola.gov, and I will send you the certification forms. There's a certification form for individuals. You can self-certify that you meet the income requirements of Section 3. And there's a certification form for businesses where you will need to provide some documented evidence that you have low-income individuals working for your business, such as employee roster or payroll information showing that your labor hours of your business are being worked by Section 3 workers. And again, here's my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out, send me an email, and we can talk about certification or benefits to being certified. And similar to DBE, I'd like to encourage anyone that does qualify as Section 3 business to please register in BRASS so that you can stay abreast of all contracting opportunities. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Melissa Shigoda. I also work at the city, the Director of Performance and Accountability. And now I think we're ready, to take questions. And I have some more contact information for you here too of folks at city departments. So I'll show you this real quick and then we can get into questions. So we have a lot of people here today. We have even more people at the city working on this that you can get in touch with. Our workforce development department has more resources if you're looking for for work, or if you want to get connected with workers who are looking for work, definitely reach out to them. Our economic development team has resources, all kinds of resources for businesses. And then I have on here contact information for DBE certification, for Mary at the PDU, procurement, Kai. Michelle, who just gave hers, and my email address is up here too. And yeah, and now we'll go ahead and just open it up for questions. If folks who are online want to type their questions into the chat, we'll try to field some that way. And if folks who are in person want to just raise your hand, I guess we'll just call on people. And maybe you guys can walk here with me and we can just, thanks.
Fill out number. Melissa.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna actually answer any questions. Yeah. Yeah.
I can start. So the December first year-based contract, it's December 15th, is there a time? And is there a place online where the opportunity is listed?
Yeah, so that was a question about the advertisement of the Miraboo project and the pre-bid on the 16th. So the best way to access that information would be registered in BRAX for that project and take a look at the information there. So I would go to NOAA.gov and then go to the supplier portal BRAX.
It might also be on the city calendar too, on NOAA.gov.
It is.
It is, yes.
You can find the city calendar, you go to NOLA.gov, then you scroll down, you'll see the city calendar, and all of the city meetings, bids, and RFPs are posted.
And then we got one in the chat that I think is for you, Michelle. Is there a HR wage limit that determines if your employees qualify for the program?
Yes, so that would be, right, so the eligibility, the income limits for section 3 are, I'll try to pull the slide up again. They are determined by HUD every year. And so it's based on household income and family size. So for the members of the household, if the total household income is that, that amount or less, then you meet the qualifications as low income. And then if you also live in New Orleans, you meet the qualification as a section 3 resident.
Thanks. Yes.
Do you all accept HUD section 3 certification?
Yes.
Here,
I should say annual, I'm sorry.
do we
It's
accept
certified
HUD
annual.
section 3 certification for
Yes, yes. So we do work with other organizations in the area, particularly. I monitor several projects that Kano also monitors, so we work together very closely and very well. So yes, if any business is certified as section 3 by Kano, the city also accepts that certification.
Will this, so we had one come in, will this presentation be available for replay at a later date? Yes, we're recording it and we're hoping to post it somewhere on the city website, and I'll send out a link to everyone who registered. Another question, are there separate procurement goals for DBE in section 3?
They are different.
So maybe, yeah, it is a little confusing.
For section 3, the goals are 10% of subcontracts, of your subcontracts should be for section 3 businesses. And keep in mind there is overlap between section 3 and DE. And so if a business is certified as DE and also section 3, they can count towards your goals for both programs. Yeah.
Yes, and then so for DBE, most of our contracts have an established goal of 35%, but that's going to be within the invitation to bid or the RFP to be sure. And that is separate from the section 3, but again, if there's overlap, that is okay. You can count towards go with both as long as that firm is certified.
How much is that, sorry, how much is that included in the grading scale for the RFP? Does it go and,
Section 3, at this time, is not its own separate scoring sheet of RFPs. But respondents are expected to submit a Section 3 plan, your plan and strategy for meeting Section 3 goals.
So, yeah, just in case folks can hear that online, for Section 3, it's not part of the scoring, but you are required to submit a plan.
And then for DVE, right now that is 15 points as part of the scoring for RFP. 15 points, and that's going to vary depending on the RFP according to FEMA.
Yeah.
You said that you make a decision based on best value, and you said that this was a committee that they said, who is on that committee and how do they, what process are they called?
Yes, good question.
That's cars.
That's for
For
Kai.
Kai. Kai, are you still on here?
Could you repeat the question, Melissa?
Yes, the question is for the selection committees, who's on the selection committees and how do they determine the best value?
So the committees are comprised of 5 city employees based on our executive order. And they'll make a determination as to the best value by evaluating what is proposed in terms of the technical proposal and sort of looking at what the proposer is providing for the cost that they are proposing. So it's sort of a balancing act at looking at exactly what services they're going to provide, what the full package will look like, and then sort of comparing that to what the pricing is. And they may need to compare all of the respondents, or it may just be looking at each individual response on it at its own face value with what they're providing for the cost. So they're determining best value based on what is being provided for the cost that's being proposed.
And Kai, for the 5 people from the city that are on the committee, is it typically the CAO or their designee, the chief financial officer or their designee, someone from the department, and like someone else with like subject matter expertise? Is that kind of general makeup?
Yes, that's the general makeup, the CAO or his designee, the CFO or his designee, and then you'll have, usually it's the department manager, or it may be a department head or someone from the department who is familiar with the subject matter. And then you'll have that individual within local government who has some sort of relevant expertise.
Great, thanks. Yeah.
Is all of that written down?
Yeah, Kai, is that written down somewhere, and like the process as well as the different designated members of the city?
The composition of the committee meeting is written in our it's in Executive Order LC 20-01, which if someone wants to locate it, it is on our webpage. So purchasing.nola.gov, and I think it's under forms and procedures is where we have it located, but it's actually in the mayor's executive order, LC 20-01.
Great, thanks. I have a specific question about the section. Okay. It's not clear to me when you talk about that level, like I can't see the level. It looks like the one is 39,300.
Right.
So if that would be the current information as you're filling out the form for that particular employee. In other words, if they just started with your firm, let's say a week ago, okay, and you're having to fill out the form now, you would be using whatever their income level is then, averaged out over the year. Or would you take literally their past 365 days, or would you use their tax income from the previous year?
Either way, it can be determined based on the previous calendar year's income, or based on what they're making right now, annualized out to a full year.
Because it could be where, you know, however it's calculated, it could be yes or no, you know what I mean, like if they're very close to the line.
Well, the other thing about Section 3 is that, certification isn't, you know, just completing a thing and then it goes away. The point of Section 3 is to try to promote long-term employment opportunities. And so if a person is low income, meets that limit when you hired them within the past 5 years, maybe, you know, they've been working at the company and their income has gone up. But because you hired them when they were low income, they can count as a Section 3 worker in terms of either getting your business certified, you can count them as a Section 3 worker, or towards your goals for the project.
So if I can reiterate, it sounds like you're saying if the employer had worked with you for a period, let's say, and at some point they were Section 3, you could continue that, even though maybe their income has changed.
For a certain amount of time, right? So generally, if you hired them within the past 5 years, and at the time you hired them, they met this qualification. But since then, their income has risen. Since within the past 5 years, they hit the income limit, they qualify.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great. Another one that came in online is a two-part question. So how will compliance be monitored for the duration of the project to ensure companies are doing quality work? And then how will the percentage of low-income workers that are being kept in, are being paid equitable wages, how is that being monitored? So, yeah.
So Section 3 is monitored on an ongoing basis throughout the project. So we'll ask for periodic updates. Have you hired any new employees? Were any of these new hires, were they Section 3 individuals? Or did you do any subcontracting during this period? Did you subcontract with any Section 3 businesses? And as far as equitable wages, that goes maybe a little more into Davis-Bacon. You know, on the HUD-funded projects, there are prevailing wage rates, and so we do payroll monitoring in that respect. Please let me know if I didn't answer your question right.
Yeah. Is there any monitoring of the quality of the work that's done once it's been contracted out?
That's a different question for construction versus domestic construction. Yeah, the city does have resident inspection contracts and has our own inspectors. Resident inspection part. Also there's some supervision by the engineer firm that designed the project. So there's certainly monitoring of quality regardless of whether it's contractor or subcontractor. And then those issues are generally worked out with the client.
Okay. Great. So in case of this, I understand some of this is probably a little bit hard to hear for those that are online. But basically for the construction projects, the monitoring happens by the engineering firm that designed it, as well as
the city's resident inspectors.
The city's resident inspectors. We can try to take the questions that have come in and kind of like draft up a question and answer sheet to send out to you as well. And it's seeing now it's 5:01, so that's kind of perfect timing if there isn't any other questions. Thank you all so much for participating, and don't hesitate to reach out. And Andre and Chuck are coming up to close this out.
I want want to harness my inner Russell Simmons. Thank you guys for coming out. I also want to say for those that are graduates of Thrive New Orleans and of Propeller, we're going to have a post conversation, won't last long, after the meeting in our computer room. So if you can hang around for a second, that'd be great. But thank you so much for being online, and thank you so much for coming by Thrive Night Awards. And we look forward to you getting a lot of opportunities in infrastructure.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, and we will be sending out this presentation and resources. You know, we've got some questions around bonding, so we'll send out resources to the capital, bonding, and if anyone here has any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. I think our information, our emails are on the slide. And then the December 16th COVID meeting is currently listed on the website, but it will be listed shortly. And that's the December, the project that just was announced today.
And I'm remiss for not recognizing Peter Brooks from Nucor, who's helped finance a lot of green infrastructure companies. Peter, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.